Caroline Leavitt stepped into the bright interior of Liberty Air, a boutique airline known for its progressive branding and eco-friendly services. She was heading to Phoenix for a policy summit where she would be speaking on national media reforms. Wearing a sleek charcoal gray pantsuit and a pair of modest heels, her posture and presence projected the quiet power of someone who had survived storms and had learned how to command them. Her first-class ticket was confirmed. She made her way down the jet bridge, nodded politely to the flight attendant at the door, and took her seat in 2A. As she buckled in, she didn't notice the sideways glance from a flight attendant further down the aisle. That was Lena Monroe, a vocal liberal, social justice activist, and known for her online rants against the conservative establishment. Lena's Instagram bio read, "Here to dismantle systems, feminist, BLM, she, her." She had thousands of followers and saw her job as more than customer service. It was, in her view, a stage for silent protest. The moment she saw Caroline Leavitt, Lena's chest tightened. Her? On my flight? In first class? Lena tried to stay composed, but her mind raced. She pulled aside another attendant, whispered, "That's Caroline Leavitt, the Trump girl, the mouthpiece." The other attendant, Ben, frowned. "So she's a passenger." "I'm not okay with this," Lena muttered, already pulling up the flight manifest on her tablet. "Watch me handle it." She approached Caroline with a forced smile. "Good morning," Lena began. "Can I see your boarding pass, please?" Caroline, surprised but unbothered, handed it over. "Of course." Lena stared at it, her lips pursed. There might be an issue. This seat doesn't look like it's properly assigned to you." Caroline arched an eyebrow. "It's a confirmed first-class seat. I've flown this airline before. There's no mistake." "Well, I'll just double-check with the gate crew," Lena said curtly, and walked away without waiting for a reply. Caroline exhaled, already sensing what this was. 10 minutes later, Lena returned with a tight-lipped smile. "Ms. Leavitt, unfortunately there's a discrepancy with your ticket. We'll need to reseat you in the main cabin." Caroline looked at her. "On what grounds?" "I don't feel comfortable having you up here," Lena said, quietly but with icy resolve. "I'm sorry, but we're moving you." Caroline held her gaze, unblinking. "You don't feel comfortable?" "I believe you'll be better suited elsewhere," Lena added with a condescending smile. Passengers had begun to listen in. Caroline closed her notebook, stood up calmly, and said nothing. She gathered her briefcase and walked toward the back of the plane. Seat 34B, middle row, no recline, no legroom, near the bathroom. As she buckled in, she opened her phone and began typing. Thread: "What happens when you're a conservative woman in America and a flight attendant decides you're not welcome in first class? This morning I boarded flight 4281 from JFK to Phoenix. Ticket confirmed. Seat 2A, first class. Within minutes I was asked to move. No explanation beyond a discrepancy. The truth? The flight attendant recognized me and decided my politics made me unworthy of sitting up front. I complied, but I'm sharing this not because I want drama, but because it's a reminder of how deep our political divisions have become. If this can happen to someone like me, it can happen to anyone. This isn't a rant, it's a call for accountability. I don't want revenge. I want fairness. #bias. In the sky and #Liberty Air. Within 20 minutes, the thread exploded. Thousands of reposts, then tens of thousands. Fox News picked it up within the hour. So did the Daily Wire, The Hill, and eventually even CNN, which framed it as a political clash at 35,000 feet. Donald Trump Jr. reposted her thread. So did Elise Stefanik. Laura Ingraham quoted her with, "Proof that conservatives are being shamed even at 30,000 feet. Disgusting." At Liberty Air HQ, panic set in. By the time Caroline landed, her thread had over 12 million views, and the airline's PR inbox was a war zone. Hashtags like #boycott Liberty, Air, and #Lena the flight attendant were trending globally. Even non-political influencers were weighing in. As Caroline stepped off the plane, reporters were already waiting outside the terminal. She gave no interviews, just a wave and a quiet walk toward her waiting car. Inside the Liberty Air corporate tower, a rapid investigation was launched. Passengers confirmed Caroline hadn't caused any trouble. In fact, many had overheard Lena whispering about her political disdain. Lena was immediately suspended. Her online following turned into a mob, some defending her, most attacking her. She was doxxed. Her past tweets dug up. Brands she'd partnered with began pulling support. She issued no comment until 3 days later. That's when Caroline received the letter. Dear Ms. Leavitt, I owe you a deep and honest apology. I'm writing this with the full awareness that words can't undo the harm I caused. But I want to try, not to redeem myself, but to acknowledge my wrong. When you stepped onto that plane, I saw not a passenger, but a label. I let your politics become your entire identity in my eyes. I let bias override my duty, my professionalism, and my humanity. What I did wasn't just a violation of policy, it was a violation of decency. I embarrassed you, singled you out, and treated you as someone lesser. That is inexcusable. I don't agree with your politics, I likely never will, but I'm now painfully aware that disagreement doesn't justify mistreatment. My role as a flight attendant is to serve all passengers with respect. I failed in that. The fallout from this has been severe. I've lost my position. I've been publicly shamed. And honestly, that hurts. But what hurts more is knowing that I became the very kind of person I claimed to fight against. I always said I was standing up for justice. But justice without empathy is just noise. You showed more grace in that moment, walking to the back of that plane without raising your voice, than I would have. And that grace has haunted me every hour since. I know you don't owe me anything. Not forgiveness, not a response, but I needed you to know that I'm learning from this. I'm committed to doing better. I'm sorry. Truly. Lena Monroe. Caroline read the letter in her office, sunlight casting shadows across her desk. She sat still for a long time. Then finally she wrote back, Lena, thank you for your message. I accept your apology, not because I condone what happened, but because I believe in the power of growth. What you did was wrong, but what you're doing now, owning it, is rare and meaningful. You're right. We may never agree on politics, but we can agree on human dignity. I hope this experience humbles and strengthens you. I didn't ask for this attention, but I intend to use it, not to destroy, but to build a better culture of respect, even among disagreement. I wish you clarity and conviction moving forward, grounded not in rage, but in reflection. Caroline Leavitt. In the weeks that followed, Liberty Air's CEO issued a formal apology. They announced a partnership with a bipartisan nonprofit to reform internal training on ideological discrimination. Lena, for her part, quietly joined a diversity and inclusion organization, not as a speaker, but as a student. And Caroline? She boarded her next flight, again in first class. The crew greeted her kindly. Passengers nodded in silent solidarity. No drama, no tension. Just the smooth rhythm of a flight that remembered what service, respect, and professionalism were supposed to look like. Caroline sipped her coffee, opened her notebook, and wrote 6 simple words on the top of a blank page. Grace doesn't shout, but it moves. The incident on Flight 4281 didn't just make headlines. It triggered a ripple effect across the airline industry, the media landscape, and even among politically opposed communities. Within 72 hours of Caroline Leavitt's X thread going viral, Liberty Air's stock fell by 11%. Their social media accounts were flooded with tens of thousands of angry comments, and customer cancellations spiked, especially among conservative travelers. But interestingly, the outcry wasn't just from Caroline's political base. Many liberals and moderates condemned the incident too, seeing it as a violation of basic decency and fairness, regardless of ideology. Think pieces poured in. The Atlantic ran a headline, "When Bias Backfires at 30,000 Feet." The Wall Street Journal followed with, "Flying While Conservative, a case study in cultural overreach." Airlines across the country quietly began reviewing their internal conduct policies. Executives at Liberty Air convened an emergency session with legal, PR, and HR advisors. The risk was no longer just reputational, it was financial and structural. Meanwhile, Caroline didn't bask in victory. She kept her response minimal but intentional. She declined TV appearances, offering only a short televised statement. This was never about getting someone fired. It's about ensuring that no one is judged by their beliefs before they're treated with respect. We can debate fiercely in the public square, but not in the aisle of an airplane. That clarity struck a chord. Even critics of her politics admitted she had handled the situation with restraint and precision. No shouting match, no calls for cancellation, just steady public accountability. As for Lena Monroe, her world had been flipped upside down. In a matter of days, she went from social media darling to internet pariah. She deleted all her accounts, issued no TikTok statements, and stayed off the radar. But quietly, she enrolled in a restorative justice program. She began attending community forums on political tolerance in the workplace, often anonymously. She reached out to former coworkers, apologizing directly. Some accepted, others didn't. 6 months later, she published a reflective article in Medium titled, "I Let My Politics Blind Me, What I Learned from Flight 4281. It began with the line, "I was so focused on fighting oppression, I didn't see the oppression I was capable of creating." The article went viral, this time in a different way. Lena wasn't seeking redemption, she was offering perspective. Her tone wasn't defensive, it was accountable. She started giving talks at aviation training centers, not as a hero but as a cautionary voice. In time, she was invited to join a bipartisan task force on ethical passenger treatment. And Liberty Air? They implemented one of the most rigorous neutrality and respect policies in the industry. They required all crew, regardless of rank or contract, to undergo annual training in viewpoint neutrality. A new internal code of conduct was named after the incident, the Leavitt Standard. The case was even mentioned during a Senate hearing on transportation policy. It became a symbol of how power, politics, and professionalism must be balanced in public service roles, whether you're behind a podium or pushing a drink cart. As for Caroline, her influence only grew, not because she forced a scandal, but because she chose grace over fire. She had reminded the country that influence doesn't always look like yelling. Sometimes it looks like walking to seat 34B in silence while the world watches. In her private office months later, she opened a new notebook. On the first page, she wrote, "Let your dignity do the shouting." The skies remained turbulent, politically, socially, spiritually. But passengers and crews alike began flying with a bit more awareness, not just of rules, but of respect. And sometimes that's all it takes to start changing the culture, one flight at a time.